Guys, we had a look there at MVP Black, and Rich is back. Rich is back. World-renowned, best player in the world. Everybody going into BlizzCon last year said Rich is the best player. And it's been that way for a long time. He took the first phase off, and he's back. And Wolf, they're looking as dominant as ever. Remember last year, their biggest run was with Rich on their team, and they're looking good again.
That's right. Rich is back, and that's another key factor going into this. But I want everyone to remember, too, that this roster looks a lot stronger now that Reset and Sake have better defined their roles. Reset's become the carry DPS player, the one that's doing the main damage dealers. In this hyper carry meta that's coming out of Korea where you have the double supports protecting it, it's Reset who carries that. Sake, who plays the Tassadar now. Sake, who plays the split push Falstad. So those roles are better defined. And Kyocha back now on the support, not playing the melee flex. Remember, he was also the range flex back in the day. He was the one playing the Tassadar. Sure, you'd be doing some of that split push Falstad, but now roles are better defined. And when Rich came back to the team, they were able to kind of divide everything up, make things a little bit more solid. And it reminds you of the old MVP Black. But remember, with Reset on the team, this is still definitely a new roster. And Kyocha, will he stack up to Merryday in this tournament? That's the big question.
There are a lot of questions, but there is another team on the other side of this coin that is our Southeast Asia representative, Deadly Kittens. Let's take a closer look at our Southeast Asian representatives.
Practicing a lot every day. We've been playing a lot against mainly Taiwanese teams, and we'll be analyzing the Western Clash and then incorporating their meta into our meta as well. And this is how we plan to do.
Daze is no help as well. If Melody can get even these kills.
我们的目标是8强，我们觉得我们很强。我们要遇到 MVP Black， 因为我们觉得我们打了他们过后，我们就遇到我们的目标了，就是8强。
There is Deadly Kittens, the fan favorite from Mid-Season Brawl. Their beautiful logo, the lovable team there, Trixler. Eyes are on them to start the day, but Mid-Season Brawl, they won a lot of people over, so much so that there was a tweet from you yesterday that said that they're one of the teams you're looking out for. What about them stands out to you?
I mean, I love the Deadly Kittens for the reasons that you mentioned. Their playful demeanor is something that you can just cherish and love, right? When you go to the Western Clash, you think of Nomiya. Those are the team that you have the heart for. That's the same here for the Eastern Clash. You love looking at Deadly Kittens and cheering for them. They're a team that prides themselves on adapting, and I'm hoping that adaptation will be enough for them to move forward, because their first match is a little bit difficult. They even tweeted about it themselves. They said exactly, MVP who? As our paws quiver ever so slightly. So they know it's a bit of a difficult matchup for them, but still it's one that they're willing to come in for. Game number 1, I expect them to play a little bit standard, try and get a feel for how that matchup's gonna go, and then game number 2, bring out the funky stuff.
Bring out the funky stuff indeed. I mean, they've got the cool logo. You know, we had a chance to sit down with all of these teams yesterday. We talked to them at length, and I think a lot of teams know that MVP Black is one of the favorites. And it really struck me as odd, because I remember we saw some playful interviews with him at Mid-Season Brawl, and he made a comment, obviously playfully. He's like, MVP Black got lucky that they beat them at Mid-Season Brawl. And it was really interesting to kind of see that evolution. You know, we've seen them, they've talked about a lot of the changes that they've been making, trying to make more plays on that macro level, things like that. But, you know, when we talk about this matchup, do those types of things really start to matter against the team like MVP Black?
When you look at what approach, you know, Deadly Kittens is probably going to take, based on what they've told us and what you've seen in interviews from them, is they want to try to take the macro-oriented approach. They want to, of course, avoid fighting MVP Black directly, because when you lose a team fight, especially in mid to late game, it can just cause you to lose a keep or potentially the game. So what they want to do is avoid team fighting, try to draft around that macro style. That's the plan going into game 1, you have to think, but after that maybe goes out the window, maybe that fails to work for them. Perhaps Black ends up getting the better macro rotations. Maybe that's when we start to see some of the snipe drafts coming out, some experimentation in the in the best of 3.
And I'm terrified for that type of mindset going into game number 1 for many reasons, but one of them is Innover versus Rich. That top lane is going to be a very difficult one for Innover, and I think one of the reasons why Deadly Kittens do well in the region is because they can leave Innover in the top lane. He can pretty much dominate anyone in the 1v1 matchup, but what happens when they actually have opposition? That's a scary thing here, and Illidan being drafted for MVP Black, for me, would be an auto win, which is very scary to say.
And we do know as well that Rich is very willing to still play heroes like Malthael in the top lane. He's ready to dominate the top lane if that's what the target is going to be in the draft for Deadly Kittens here. The hero pool for Rich in the top lane is immense. We even saw him bringing out heroes like Chen in the solo top lane back in BlizzCon for the Fall Championship. So the hero pool is wide. He's also one of the higher KDA heroes in HGC Korea because he doesn't get picked in the top lane. He doesn't get ganked, so trying to target him, I think, would be a mistake. I think trying to get map control by taking the Merc camps and trying to get lane pressure on is the way to go.
Well, guys, we are taking a look at Deadly Kittens. Mur there, he switched over. He former support, went to warrior, back to support so that they could leave stronger players like that to be the shot caller, play that primary role. NSJ was at the All-Star match in mid-season brawl, definitely went out and made a name for themselves, and they're stronger there, playing a role that's desperately needed to make the proper calls when they talk about playing more of the macro game tricks.
This goes back to what they were talking about at the MSB. We are a team that is going to be stuck together. We need to be sure and become better as a roster. And so they're making swaps within their own roster rather than trying to look for different players outside in the regions for SEA, which so far hasn't really panned out as well as they would like, but they're still trying to cope. That was one of the quotes that really stood out to me from Mur, is we're trying to cope with what we have and we're trying to become an effective team. Those role swaps are a byproduct of that. Will it work out for them? Maybe. So far, they were undefeated in their qualifiers. Stronger being able to make that shot calling, get in and force fights for the team has been a benefit. But again, against Korea, we'll see.
And remember, for MVP Black, they had the longest standing roster in Here's a Storm of all time until, of course, Rich took his hiatus. We had Reset swap into the team. Kocho went into that the melee role to fill the shoes of Rich, and they struggled, right? But it feels like now that Rich is back, this team, this 5-man, it almost feels like the MVP that we saw dominate spring. It feels like the MVP that nearly won the summer season against Tempest in that Game 5, in that final game on Towers of Doom. It feels like that's the same sort of feel that MVP Black has going into HGC Korea and now going into Eastern Clash. The confidence levels are very much raised from where they were before. And this is a stronger MVP Black, make no mistake, than what we saw at Mid-Season Brawl.
Yeah, they even say themselves, I think that they think this is the best roster that MVP Black has ever had. And that's with Kyocha being on support. And that could be perceived as a weakness, which at that point you're grasping for straws. This team looks unbeatable, especially when you watch them in their matchups.
I want to throw out a couple stats to you guys. I really looked at this team. I'm thinking, man, this team looks a lot better. Obviously, their record shows it. They're #1 in their region. They averaged more than a minute less, or less than a minute more off their average game time. It was just about 16.5 minutes. It's down to just over 15. Things like that show that you are coming out and you are dominating teams. The average KDA of this team is the highest in the world going into this. I mean, things like that really stand out to a team that talks about aggression. But again, we gotta still take a look at Deadly Kittens because they are gonna sit there and talk about what their macro control is. I'm not sure how they're gonna put up with the pressure, but we're gonna take a look at the map picks and bans here as we see Brax's holdout, no surprise ban, and Deadly Kittens, the Battle of Eternity favorite of MVP Black, not going to be here.
So throwing 2 wrenches into the gears already here in map draft, taking away Battlefield of Eternity, which has historically been one of MVP Black's best maps, one of their favorite maps to control the draft on, and then also going into the other, as Chief Left and I like to call it, default ban here with Warhead Junction, because MVP Black and all of the Korean region will normally have almost blocked, burned into the screen, the Braxis and the Warhead bans. So when you know Black is likely to ban Braxis, picking Warhead into them is a smart choice because it's a map they don't play very often in professional play. But it's a bit of a two-edged sword because you know that MVP Black is practicing the map. You have less games to study for them because they play very few televised matches on the map. So you have to be careful picking into this one because you don't know exactly what MVP Black is going to be playing here.
Yeah, that is the fear that comes out for me, is that there will be a lot of 1v1s that will be occurring on this battleground. You're going to be in your lane against someone. This is probably one of the only battlegrounds that you actually have that laning phase that you may miss out from other battlegrounds. So we'll see if Deadly Kittens can handle it as we're going to get the Eastern Clash started.
Eastern Clash underway as game #1 here between MVP Black and Deadly Kittens has kicked off. And right out of the gate, we have ourselves an Abathur ban on the side of MVP Black.
Yeah. Genji now will be banned out as well, expecting that to happen. Now, there are a couple of strategies that really work out on Warhead.
Illidan, instant Illidan.
And there it is.
Hello, Rich.
So we talked about how Deadly Kittens wants to potentially take the global approach on this map. It was really L5, then known as Ballistics, that popularized the Hunt Illidan on this very map, going back to the Gold Club World Championship Series. So this is no surprise that the hyper carry of choice for MVP Black is going to be Illidan. We'll likely see double support in forms of a normal healer, possibly the Tyrael or the Tastar coming out. So Deadly Kittens does need to consider this as they move forward. They expected how MVP Black was going to draft, though, and look at this, grabbing double global.
Double global right out of the gate. You know, Wolf, you and I sat down the other night. We were looking at Illidan stats. We wanted to take a look at the Illidan stats. Now, in a 4-game sample in this first phase, Rich had over a 30 KDA. He is showing his old dominant self, and they snap locked that in. You know, I joke a lot about when I'm playing with people. I was like, if somebody snap locks a pick in, you know they're serious.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing about Rich's Illidan, better than other top Illdans in Korea, for example, when you compare Rich's Illidan to Jungah's, for example, it's how much siege damage he gets per minute, how often he will get extra EXP in lane. He will not be picked, he will not be ganked, so he very rarely has to hearth home. He's a very safe Illidan laner.
Trixler, we see a lot of Tassadar and a lot of Falstad out of Sake right now in MVP Black. You see the double global on the other side. Do you feel that that should be a necessary priority to match globals this early in the draft to pick up that Falstad?
Yeah, I think Tassadar is a definite way to go, especially with other supports being up. You can maybe move into the Falstad right away. We'll see what MVP Black wants to move into, but I am very curious to see if Deadly Kittens can get that pick on Illidan. You were mentioning the sieging. There it is. Tassadar and Tracer coming in.
So the Tracer pick with the Tassadar, an old MVP Black favorite, we saw it from them as early as spring 2016. It was Kocha on the hero back then. I think we'll have a different story today with that particular hero, but Tassadar coming in here as well, so you have to think it's going to be Sake on the Tassadar to have that extra protection for the Tracer and the Illidan, but it doesn't mean it's going to be a direct one trick pony kind of hyper carry with Illidan being the one who's taking all the support. They're going to have both range damage and harass from Tracer, looking for ganks, looking for picks, and also Illidan's going to be the one diving into the fight, setting up the engage with the hunt.
It's definitely an interesting approach. The one thing I like to note is Brightwing's changes recently, and we are on an updated patch to where Brightwing has that update to where she gets spell armor on her Pixie Dust now. And that is one deterrent that you can use towards Tracer. But I wonder if you're Deadly Kittens, do you need more than that? Do you need something like a Zarya? Do you need to mix it up? And it's something that they've played before. And I wonder, what do they feel? And you got to think right now, MVP Black has all of their damage locked in. So they need to take away a support, and they do that with Uther.
Yeah, Deadly Kittens need to decide soon if they want to move into a scenario where they try to group up more and go for boss kills, try and get those bosses pushing in different lanes, or do they want to match MVP Black on this pseudo-global strategy that's already occurring. Tracer will be moving around and looking for those ganks, as Wolf mentioned, which means later post-10, Illidan, if they ever find a 2-on-1 or a 3-on-1, Illidan can add a number in that scenario and go in for a fight and try to burst down that Brightwing or even Dahaka.
Yeah, the Ariel ban here, I feel, is just a safety ban from Black. Ariel's been so highly prioritized in Korea right now, and of course in the West as well. So they're just saying, okay, I don't know if they're running 100% this double support with some sort of carry DPS, but I want to make sure that they don't have the opportunity to use the Ariel for something like Lunara that works very well against the Tracer and the Illidan, or maybe that Vala play, perhaps the Q build Vala coming out, but still having that extra Ariel healing, something they were concerned about, so they want to remove it. And I wonder how much gank potential Brightwing and Dahaka will really have against this hyper-mobile comp from MVP Black.
I think it's the early game where the Dahaka Brightwing can be really strong. If you find the moment where Illidan's diving forward, because typically against Dahaka, you're going to have those moments where if a drag misses, Illidan's going to push as hard as he can, try to break Dahaka down and get to a spot where he can siege, as you were mentioning earlier. Brightwing can come in and kind of mitigate that. Greymane and Varian will be the pickup, so Deadly Kittens deciding, okay, we're going to get to a spot where Dahaka and Brightwing can be the ones that are off-soaking. We can try to force down a boss and force a fight to come our way where MVP Black might be at a disadvantage.
And I feel like this is a very CC-based draft from Deadly Kittens. They want to have Taunt to lock down the Tracer, the Illidan, these hyper-mobile heroes. They have Dahaka for the tongue grabs. If you can hit those consistently, you shut down that Illidan, make it so that he can't actually get his lifesteal back, so that Tracer can't escape with her recalls and, of course, her blinks away. You have the Polymorph from Brightwing. So their draft here is very intelligent, try to shut down this very mobile composition from MVP Black.
It's definitely very mobile, and you talked about the CC, and that's the perfect CC setup. I wonder, you know, when we talk about Greymane, will we see that Cursed Bullet? You do have low health pools between Illidan and Tracer, but if you're looking to get that full lockdown blow up, that might be the combo. We've seen it work before, but this is a very different battleground. Again, on the side of MVP Black, you have to have, I mean, you don't necessarily have to have another support here with this comp, but you want to have another support. And normally the fallback option for this team is Malfurion. Kyocha has played a significant amount of Malfurion. That Rhaegar pick surprises me a bit.
The Rhaegar pick we see mostly with the Illidan compositions more than anything else because it gives the Ancestral extra bonus heal. So it gives you that kind of panic button when things go wrong. When the CC hits the Illidan or the Tracer, but more so the Illidan, that's when the panic is going to come in with the Ancestral to save him there. And I mean, it's a pretty standard fallout. Muradin is going to give the attack speed slows onto Greymane. He's going to have to provide some extra CC, but he's a more mobile tank. And this is pretty much a straight up standard MVP Black draft.
The main reason you get Rhaegar here too also is for that cleanse. You want to have the moments where you decide that you want to commit to your opponents. You have to play around the cooldown trades, which is very unfortunate. The only other option that would be up based on the supports that have been banned out would be Kharazim, with Brightwing already be taken away. But Kharazim's a little bit too late game. If you have Tracer or Illidan, you want to break open the forts early game and get your spot to where Illidan can do what he would like. So Rhaegar is a definite answer.
Triple global here. Now there's a lot of gank potential from what Deadly Kittens has chosen. We've seen this style in Korea twice, actually. It was by L5 both times. This kind of composition, you suddenly have Brightwing, Dahaka, and Falstad going in on a single target. Rich is likely to be that target if he's split pushing, if he's being aggressive, trying to get structural damage done. Rich is so famous, though, for never stepping past the midline, never actually overextending. But I think this draft is designed to win team fights by knocking Rich and, of course, very likely Sake on the Tracer, depending on how they want to pick the heroes here. Could be reset. Knock them out of the fight with all the CC. But in the early game, as you were saying, Trick, that early game is where these ganks are going to be strongest. And without the Falstad, I wasn't really confident they might be able to try to find picks. But now that they have the triple global, I think there's definitely some potential there.
Yeah, they definitely have a lot of mobility here, which should allow for them to move in for fights. I am worried about the mobility that is available for MVP Black. They can escape from a majority of fights. The only one I can see getting picked off is maybe that Rhaegar.
Well, guys, we are going to get underway as MVP Black takes off against Deadly Kittens here in game number 1 of the Eastern Clash. We're going to start things off. It's going to be me and Trixler bringing you some of this action as we take a look at Deadly Kittens here on the right in red.
There they are in the red, and on the left side in the blue, it's going to be MVP Black running that Tracer Illidan composition. We'll see how they can get pressure onto their opponents. Already looking at the talents, Falstad definitely building for that late game with that Seasoned Marksman.
Definitely going to be going for the late game there, and it's something that you got to keep an eye on. Illidan does have that evasion, so the auto attacks don't work there, but you'll obviously going to be see potentially the hammer games. It's sometimes I'd like to see the static charge at level 4 to keep up with that mobility. Make sure you can move as we see the early aggression here on the top by MVP Black.
That's right. Typically you'll see this on Warhead Junction or bigger maps like Cursed Hollow. We put 3 in a lane and try to pressure it down, grab the turrets for the extra experience. And SG being a little bit too wonky on the bottom side, but still the result is solid. They get a turret as well.
Well, that's not the normal way we start off there with that composition. It's very difficult to push lanes when we talk about Greymane with a Brightwing. Normally, Greymane is kind of that push that we see early on, but it's not normally with a Brightwing. Normally you have some type of consistent healer there, and Brightwing only is kind of giving you some of the time.
I mean, it's fine when you're in a 1v3, but sure, when you compare supports, Rhaegar on this side, he can handle that poke coming his way. He's able to hit 3 targets, of course, with the heal. Brightwing should be fine there. The idea, though, is that Greymane does bring up that front damage, which allows you to bring the turret quickly. You saw the dancing around, though, from NSG, because he was in a weird spot where he was taking turret damage from
the
2 turrets.
Yeah.
Exactly. So a little bit of a misstep, could be a little on nerves. They need to make sure to shake that out and get ready, because going into it, you can't have these moments of non-clarity against MVP Black.
We're going to head right back in as we get through that momentary pause, and we can see again MVP Black continue the push in that top lane. And this is a much more consistent approach, as you can see, with the evasion, with the Tassadar shields, with the Illidan, makes it a lot easier to get that push in.
Manaver holding it down for the moment with a Dahaka. If need be, Falstad or Brightwing can rotate in to help him. And you can really see that Deadly Kittens have approached this battleground to be ready for the movement. Falstad in the middle is in a great spot where you can go top or bottom based on MVP Black moves forward, so they can react well.
The thing that I think you want to keep an eye on is not necessarily this early game push. Yeah, it's nice to trade. We have to think about Illidan on this map, who can basically go off and solo a boss or get a little bit of health and push that boss. And if you talk about getting an early push, getting a good boss lane opened up, it's far different opening up the middle lane than it is opening the top lane. Middle lane is just getting experience, top lane, setting up potential win conditions.
Yeah, that's the trade-off, especially when you talk about the nukes. Hang on here, Stronger might be in trouble, taking some damage, and Tiss will jump out at the last second and survive. So Varian and crew get first blood of the tournament. First
blood of the tournament, as we're going to have our warheads spawning here in about 10 seconds, but Sake and Rich just casually taking this down. We see Innover, he's going to get that locked on, but with the minions there, the fort's not going to fire onto Rich.
Solid tongue here, and SG want to chase forward, but Rich gets away thanks to that friend or foe. So Illidan and Tacit are doing fine up there. With 2 nukes spawning, we have Brightwing and Rhaegar contesting in the bottom. Falstad may be the only one that can really change the tone of how that fight will go down if he wants to rotate in.
All of a sudden, NSJ has found himself in a tough spot as we got 3 members from MVP. Is Brightwing going to be late to the party? Sake is going to dimensional shift out of there, and Rich doing Rich things continually as he is just putting so much pressure on the Deadly Kittens here.
Has to be slightly careful here as Deadly Kittens will bring 4 to the top and Tisk just jumps away. And MVP Black right now in the first 2 minutes of the game are just looking more decisive, where Deadly Kittens are seeming to have communication issues. Here's another jump in as Rich jumps in, gets another kill, 3-0 and looking for more.
Rich is just going full on aggression, but they are going to end up trading his life for that of Brightwing. They're trying to put the pressure on the Stronger as NSJ trying to come in as Tisk taking a lot of damage, but the shield's going to keep him alive. Now NSJ, he's going to have to get out of there.
Yeah, he's going to walk away, being a little bit too aggressive. Tassadar is able to escape. Some health bars available for them. Dahaka goes to the bottom, but look at the result in experience. 6.5 to almost 5 here for Deadly Kittens, as they are in a spot where they put 4 people on top and only got 1 kill and traded out very ineffectively.
Traded out indeed, and you talk about the fact that you're running triple global. That's not the normal thing that you expect out of triple global. You think that they're going to stay in lane. We saw the shift in by Brightwing. You gave up the kills, things like that. They are minimal, but the more that they stack up, you all of a sudden find yourself in a position like, guys, like, how are we down a level and a half all of a sudden?
I mean, it's a result of them being reactive rather than proactive. Typically, when you're running multiple global compositions, you're trying to set up your waves to where you still get experience and we're able to move in quickly enough to force a fight. That hasn't been the case here, as they missed out on 3 waves in total so far based on their rotations. They need to be a bit more careful. Reset, though, keeping the pressure up with Tisk on the right side. They're looking for NSJ. Is there a pulse bomb? There is. They're looking for it. He's getting low, but he gets away.
It's a really tricky thing because you have that armor when you're in working for him, but you're trying to get away at the same time, trying to get that help. NSJ does survive there, not able to get that takedown, and you can see Deadly Kittens a little bit of miscommunication. Zaze flew in on the fall stat, Tisk walked over to the enemy side, knowing that he's on Murd and know he has the potential jukes available. They weren't able to confirm the kill, and the entire time, Trixler, Rich pushing this top lane.
I think they're in a state here where they need to relax for 4 more levels and just work towards level 10. Already so far, the gank potential that they have, the movement to get kills, has not really came into anything here. No full richness really happened. So Deadly Kittens needs to go ahead and just chill out, pull back, soak their lanes, get towards level 10. The main thing they should focus on is whether or not those bosses are grabbed. You alluded to that earlier.
You know, you talk about level 10, we talk about this composition, and it all revolves around variant. Yes, you have triple global. Yes, you have early strong contention. As we see, Tisk is going to sit on point. Falstat's flying in, but Reset going in the back onto Mur, and Mur's going to go down.
Pulse Bomb getting the kill here. Innover and crew will be able to grab the Hellbats. It's one for, I guess, 2 Hellbats trade. Not too shabby, but still, you can see MVP Black realizing how far ahead of their opponents they are. They had a Murden who was soloing Hellbats. That's very rare. Murden's not very good at doing mercenary camps, but this rotation allowed for Rich to do this. Head to the very top and work on boss.
It was not by accident that they pushed the lane, top or bottom. And it was not an accident that they let Deadly Kittens push the middle. Because you think, well, what are you going to do? You're about to be 10. Dahaka's going to go up. We can see on the minimap, he's going to find Illidan. But can the Globals get up there in time, and will Rich try and stay on this?
Innover is here, Browning also as well. I would actually love for them to turn around and proc that boss instead and try and steal it away before 10 did hit. Deadly Kittens, though, try to turn him for a fight, and Rich with the hunt and teammates rotating in will be able to turn this around on Murd.
Rich is just doing Rich things as he's like, I'm 100% okay, but I'll tell you who's not okay as Zaze is going to go down as the pulse bomb goes tick, tick, boom. And now things are spiraling out of control.
This is not looking very good here. A haymaker also picked up here as we're going to have Dahaka pushed away from the fight. Innover finally will be focused down with the last hit there from Tracer. And MVP Black keeping up the pressure, especially with nukes being available for them to pick up.
The collapse. This is the old MVP Black. This last year, last April, when they were that dominant team going into summer, you saw the full 5-man collapse, and they make every single person pay. Stronger has to make sure he doesn't get seen here, but if we take a closer look, we see the boss has been started down here in the bottom. 2 warheads still up, 2 warheads already obtained. And there goes 1 there on the middle port.
Jay, how the Deadly Kittens need still a level and a quarter of experience before they're even at a spot where they can force a team fight. MVP Black taking this opportunity has grabbed 2 nukes on the field, 3, sorry, scratch that, and a boss. This is a moment where you can group up as a team, push in the bottom lane, go for keeps, and if you get a pick, go for core.
It's a scary prospect right now, as now we see a greedy pick there, NSJ. The haymaker is going to knock him back. Not going to see Avatar this game as Tisk having a little bit of fun as NSJ he's not having as much fun, Trixler.
No, Rich there tanking the fort allows for the Tracer to get in there and, of course, take him out. 15 more seconds before Greymane spawns. 9.25 in experience. Right now, frantically, Deadly Kittens are looking for that 10. They're pushing in the middle lane, working on turrets, pushing in the top, but they still have 2 nukes and a boss about to defend in the bottom right side that they'll have to back for it.
They're going to have to hope that Mighty Gus can save them. Everybody's backing, but you have an Illidan who is the ultimate core dive hero, as there's 2 nukes on the core, and this boss is at 100%. Trixler, they're looking to end it.
Can they get a victory before 8 minutes and 30 seconds? We're about to find out, as the core shields have been burnt through due to the nukes. The boss is here as well. Zay's on the right side. He's got to use that Gus, pushing his opponents into the keep. He's got to do it. It's a little bit too late here. Reset and Rich going straight for the core. 3% down to 0, and it's going to be GG as MVP Black gets the first victory of the tournament.
7 minutes, 58 seconds.
Before 8
Warhead
minutes.
Junction. That is, just remember, guys, excessive gameplay. You got to get up and go for a walk. I mean, that's one way to make sure. Like, you get the warning, like, excessive gameplay. You've been playing a while. Well, I know how to make sure I get the most out of it. I'll play the most games by ending in 7 minutes, 58 seconds.
I mean, let's talk about those. Let's talk about the 4-man rotation top to try to get the pick. Unfortunately, the only target there for the CC was Test. It was pre-10, obviously, so they didn't have all the CC, so they didn't have the taunt, for example, but they put everything into trying to kill Test. Meanwhile, Rhaegar is just popping between top and bottom lane, getting all the EXP. He's got insanely good wave clear, and so he's getting the extra EXP. The gank fails. They turn into a 4-for-1 trade. The second one they attempt there, where Rich is the only one who dies, and then from then on, you have this EXP deficit, and you end up in the position where you just can't really recover when MVP Black has the stronger split pushing. We saw them try to push the top and mid when MVP was rotating down with the boss for the keep. It's a trade you can't win against an Illidan, but you can't fight them either because you don't have 10. What are you supposed to do?
Yeah, that was a move that was done out of desperation, obviously, and it just was a move that, if you watch the replays, you're probably going to say, all right, team, we probably shouldn't do that again. Trying to go in for a 4-man rotation on a team when they're halfway in the crossing lane, every single hero except for Rhaegar was able to get away from that gank. There's no way you're going to land it. And you know Rhaegar's in the bottom, so Deadly Kitten's just trying to make plays that just were not there.
It seemed like a little bit of miscommunication because NSJ continued to follow the Murden on the 1 pick. The rest of the team, Zays, came in and he's like, oh, wait a minute, there's a Tracer. He barrel rolled over the wall like, I don't want any part of this. I know you're down there, but good luck.
Yeah.
And then, obviously that happened. But again, things spiraled out of control. The very first minute of the game, I talked about it, is the fact that taking that lane was no accident. Taking a top or bottom lane was just like, all right, we know what you're going to do here. It reminds me of kind of like L5 in terms of macro play. And I oftentimes talk about MVP Black is that a lot of times they're known for team fighting. But what they do is they force rotations, they take picks, and then they use that as their advantage. So they'll play off a team fighting more than macro. They'll use their team fighting to set up macro instead of using their macro to set up team fighting in a sense like that.
Yeah, I really think one of the best things they could have done going into this matchup is when we first did that 3-on-3, the 3 on the top, the 3 on the bottom, they had a Murden defending that. Murden has some of the worst wave clear in the game. So if you just push in that lane, typically you should be able to take out that fort. The problem is they dance around a little bit too much and we're afraid of the Illidan pushing in the top lane, which is scary, but you do have options to defend it.
I feel like they just tried to force the ganks a little bit too hard, and when it wasn't appropriate to gank and when MVP was able to read it so quickly, the better option might have been to back out, soak faster with the false stead, not commit the big teleport with the Brightwing and the false stead fly in. Try to bait out the 4-man rotation top, then take your advantage, take the mid and the bot soak there. Sure, Rhaegar is still going to be down there, but you get a whole wave of EXP advantage during that window of time. So I think that might have been the better option. Look, they had a plan and it was executed. The execution on the defense was better for Black, but this is at least promising for Deadly Kittens going into this series because you could tell they had an idea with the draft. They had the variant pick coming up later. They knew how to deal with these very mobile heroes if we went to team fights. Unfortunately, macro-wise, the ganks didn't work out, so macro worked against them, as you were saying back there, Jay, how, kind of taking the team fights to win the macro. And I think that going into the second game, we might see some, I'd say, overall, a little bit more standard drafting coming out from Deadly Kittens, not trying to force this very clearly rehearsed plan.
It was rehearsed, and we actually saw over the shoulder there of Zays, that's Young Bake. They brought him on as coach after mid-season brawl, and he helps a lot in drafts. They devise strategies. He helps look at enemy team drafts, your opponent's drafts, and he's trying to go into theirs. And so it's one of those things that you bring somebody in there to try and help you out, try and get that extra edge. And we're going to find out here in just a moment what that next map is going to be and whether they've got any more tricks up their sleeve.
I mean, for me, you guys talk about maybe moving into a standard spot or reacting with the coaching here. I say just go all out crazy, man. You're going into game number 2 against MVP Black. It's early in the tournament. Let's just throw something out there. I mean, we've seen them run Butcher in the past, thanks to you, by the way.
They have run Butcher in the past, and they did run it on Tomb of the Spider Queen, which is going to be MVP Black's pick. And when we talk about Warhead, you've got a little bit of room to escape, but there is nowhere to hide on Tomb of the Spider Queen against MVP Black.
I wonder if we'll see Stitches. You know, Stitches definitely really only meta in Korea right now as a top-tier warrior. And it's one of the warriors that MVP Black says they think is the strongest right now, which is kind of funny. You know, myself always being a big Stitches hater at internationals events, saying, oh, they went full EU, etc. But now it's going full Korea to be going fully into the Stitches pick. It's a pick we've seen on this map a lot. And this is the map where you will often see, and I'm not saying we're going to in this particular game, but they need to be aware, Deadly Kittens, of the Medivh Stitches. And I know it sounds like this old school, oh yeah, everyone Medivh came out into the gorge, into the portal behind the wall, but when you're winning because you got early picks with the Stitches and you have your forts up for a very long time, and you do on Tomb of the Spider Queen have those forts up for a very long time, this is the map where we do see that combination come out. So it's something that no doubt Youngbaek did actually research into, and we might see, if you see like a weird Medivh ban here after the Stitches comes out, that's probably why.
Deadly Kittens, when I talked to them going into their regional, I said, you know, Medivh, KT, and Butcher can be a little fun. They actually played that in the very first series of their game. I don't think we're going to see that, but the Medivh definitely. I think when we talk about Rich, we talk about the hero pools, we see Illidan. He's also what could be, I mean, I would love to see matchups, and I hope that we get all of these teams at BlizzCon because I want to see the East versus West, Rich Medivh versus, say, Glaurung, ADRD. Like, that is a dream come true. Just Schwimpy, just get them all in a room and be like, look, somebody's got to have Medivh here, and we're going to see who we have. But Deadly Kittens, starting off this draft, won absolutely no part of Genji as an Ariel ban comes out in response from MVP Black.
Just sticking with these standard bans here, if you covered the team names, you would know. So again, Kitten's doing the research here. If you covered the team names here, you would assume this was a HGC Korea game based on what we've seen so far. The Stitch is even coming up to first pick here now. And Tastar will be taken here for Black. Now the question is, who do they pair the Tastar with? We've seen them run Illidan on this map, but it's not the map they prefer to run Illidan on. They prefer him on the bigger maps where the split pushing gets extra value, where you can use the hunt to get more EXP leads, go for long distance engages. This is a map we'd see L5 likely pick up the